If you haven't heard already, EA Sports is returning with their beloved college football series slated to be released in summer 2024. In this video, I'm going to dive into discussing the dynasty mode and specifically recruiting. Recruiting is the bread and butter of college athletics. Here are 5 ideas that I feel could help not only the depth of recruiting, but also provide real life challenges faced by today's college coaches. The very first item on my list is the ability to have recruits decommit. We've seen it time and time again. A kid picks a school, he goes through his recruiting process. High school season comes along, his senior season, goes and takes visits. A school comes in, sweeps him off his feet, and he's flipping his commitment. It happens. It happens way often. In old NCAA games, once you got a commitment, the commitment's stuck no matter what. You couldn't even have the option to remove them even if you wanted to, unless you got into the off season where you could cut the player. But leading up to signing day, there was no ability to have recruits decommit from a school. That's just not realistic. In the new game, we should definitely have that ability. Negative recruiting happens all the time. Schools are competing. They're trying to get the best players. You're going to have coaches on the recruiting trail speaking bad against a school. If a school is having a scandal, something's going on in the athletic department, best believe a competing school is going to use that against them. If they catch wind of a coach, I don't know, let's say he's leaving, take a job, or he's back channeling, whatever's going on, best believe they're going to use that against them. That's just the way the game goes. We should have the ability to be able to recruit all the way up until the early signing period. Which brings me to my next point. Early commitments. Could you imagine a game where we could recruit and build relationships with underclassmen? Think about it. High school recruiting, when it comes to college football roster building, when it comes to relationships, it starts definitely in high school. And as early as sometimes, 8th grade, there's been instances of that. That's tied to the player's ability. Some guys you can see that specialness as early as that. But for sure, there's recruits that start as a freshman on their varsity teams. They're that good. So recruiting staffs, coaches, they identify these players. They build these relationships from the time that they're freshmen through their sophomore, junior seasons. And, sometimes they can secure those commitments in those junior seasons or early in their senior years, So the ability to be able to recruit underclassmen and, again, build relationships, that's something that would be huge. A game that did a great job of this is College Hoop 2K8. They had that ability where you can recruit and follow underclassmen from freshman all the way through senior year. There's no way EA should not be able to implement this into the game. We need to have the early signing period. So in old games, we only had one signing period because that was the traditional signing period. The ESD didn't exist back then. For sure, there needs to be a distinction between having the early signing period and the traditional signing period. Most of the commits sign those national letter of intents on the early signing period, but there are those special cases where guys still take those extra 2 months and sign in February. So I think there definitely needs to be a distinction between those two periods. It would definitely provide a next level challenge in securing an early commitment from an underclassman and doing everything that you need to do to keep him in the fold, while also having to recruit other players that you're still trying to secure that commitment from. It will be amazing. Next up is GPAs. Lost in all of the sauce that is NIL, the transfer portal, all that good stuff, is the fact that these athletes are still student athletes. And so this is going to be twofold. So we're looking at it from the student athlete aspect first. As a student athlete, in order to get into some of these colleges, they have to have certain credits, certain scores, right? Um, Certain classes, electives, all that good stuff. I'm not saying that they need to go as far as to have all of that implemented, but for sure, grade point average should be something that would be looked into, because every recruit is not able to get into every school, get admitted to every school. So, for example, schools like Vanderbilt, Stanford, Northwestern, Duke, UCLA, Cal Berkeley, Rice, all of those schools, they have strict academic acceptance or requirements to get into the school. So someone that's just kind of moseying along, doing the bare minimum to finish and get their high school diploma, they're not going to be on the radar of some of those schools. So that's a degree of difficulty that those real life college coaches have to deal with. There's a certain student athlete that they have to go after. They have to make sure that not only is he an exceptional football player, but he has to be exceptional in the classroom, and that should definitely factor in, especially for those schools that have strict academic standards. This will make it a tiny bit more difficult when you're controlling a school that has those academic standards. You're not able to chase every 5-star out, on the recruiting trail. You have to narrow your scouting down to a few select guys. Grades definitely need to factor in after the recruit is enrolled in school. In the later NCAA games, there was no recognition of you basically having a student athlete. It was just basically playing football, and that's not realistic. You definitely have to have school involved somehow. Retro Bowl College, a mobile game, definitely is implementing that. It's doing that. It can be done. A company like EA Sports putting that into a football game that's supposed to be simulation of college football. You definitely have to have the student athlete portion within the game. Imagine going into conference championship week, or the college football playoff or bowl game, and you have players that are been ruled ineligible because of a midterm grade or something. The challenges like that, that's what I'm looking for and when I'm playing, my football games. These added challenges that come in, we have injuries, but having a guy have to sit out because he's not a good student, or he's done something to goof off and mess up. It's again layers of realism, and that's what we should be looking for, especially in sports gaming in 2024. Point number 4: coaching backgrounds and coaching ties. Coaches come from all over. They start in smaller roles, they work their way up the ranks into bigger roles, into coordinators and coaches. Football is played all over the country. So, for example, if I'm a coach from California, naturally I would have relationships and and coaching ties to that state. So that should be implemented when, let's say, I take over a role at a school in Texas. I should have a, I wouldn't say a natural pipeline to my home state, but I should be able to garner interest from recruits because I have those prior relationships. I would like to see something like that implemented in NCAA 14, for example. You had to build a pipeline, right? So naturally, wherever your school is located, you would have that state as a pipeline, and then maybe one or two of the neighboring states. I also would like to see the ability for us to hire full coaching staffs. The last game, they were definitely on the right track with giving us offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. So to take it a step further, let's get those position coaches in there. There's a lot of players on football rosters, especially in college, with having 85 scholarship players, and these days more with the whole COVID year situation. So you have to have a coach to be assigned to different position groups so that they can maximize the attention and the teaching going on the team. We should also be able to assign lead recruiters. So most of the time, you have your assistant coaches hitting the recruiting trail. Again, somebody's assigned to a specific region, and that's their responsibility to go scout, um, have conversations, create relationships with those different players in those different regions. We should have that ability in this upcoming game. Um, Again, all things that make the gameplay experience better for the player. And this brings me to my last point. The transfer portal and NIL definitely need to be in the game. This is basically all the talk of college football right now. When it comes to the sport, it's the transfer portal. How many players are basically switching teams, and it's not because of the school experience per se. It's open free agency basically. So transfer portal being in the game is a must. Um, we should have the ability to directly impact our NIL potential. So some schools are better than others in NIL, and that it has to do with the engagement, right? That has to do with the donor base. Um, some schools have a greater alumni base, so that they're able to pull from those alumnus and get them to donate to the athletic department or to their NIL collectives or what have you. Um, as far as the video game goes, I think we should have the ability to schmooze the donors. So I know that something like that wouldn't have been possible in the old game. Basically, with having the NCAA be all over it, that's not something they would want to promote. But seeing how this is a whole new development, and in the era of NIL, we should have donors in the game, and us have the ability to have like direct activities that impact our ability to get NIL funding. Again, immersion. With that being said, this concludes my 5 ideas for EA's college football video game scheduled to be released this summer. If you found something of interest in this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel on your way out. Thank you for watching.